again, and thank you for joining me for another exciting episode of the Nicolene Bernard Talk Show. And today, of course, I'm excited to bring my guest. Her name is Beth Brunk. Beth Brunk is a sexual trauma and grief coach, and she's seen on Instagram as Beth Brunk Coaching. And she's actually a betrayal trauma coach, grief coach. Her Instagram profile reads, "No one should walk the healing path of sexual betrayal alone. The shame of the betrayal is not yours to bear." And her bio goes on to say, after being in an abusive marriage riddled with pornography addiction, sexual abuse, and blatant lies, I wanted the pain to end. I wanted the tightness in my chest to ease so I can take a deep breath. I wanted the physical pain in my heart to dissipate and for the whirling, intrusive thoughts to vanish. Beth had been married for over 15 years, where she experienced being raped by her partner, finding out that her partner was addicted to pornography, and other horrors that she will share on the interview to come. So I'm very excited to bring her story, and the hope of today's interview is to shine some light on some of the things that women experience during their relationships or marriages, and how shame can burden and prevent you from getting healing and from getting help. But once that burden of shame is removed, and you can finally see the light. So I'm really excited to bring Beth's story to you. It's a sad story, but it does have a good ending. So please stick around to find out more from Beth. But before we dive into our conversation with Beth Brunk, please listen to these words from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the beautiful Beth Brunk. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. By the way, I must say I love your bookshelf. I love to read so much, and just you seeing your bookshelf reminds me I need to put mine up because I have my books all stacked in boxes. So that's a good weekend chore for me to do this weekend. All right, so we can get started, Beth. Again, I do appreciate you joining me. I'm very excited to hear about your story because I can see some similarities in some of the things that I've experienced and what you've mentioned. I've been on the YouTube page, your Instagram page, and I did read the bio that you sent forward to Terry in your previous email. So I believe that what we'll talk about today will help a lot of women, a lot of viewers, actually, not just women. And hopefully we can, sharing our experiences will make a difference in someone's life today. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and how did you get here?
Okay, well, let's see. I am a mother of 5 children. I was married for 21 years and am a very strong believer in the Lord. It's always such a hard question for me to answer. It's like, what do I say? What do they want to know about me?
Oh, they want to know whatever you're willing to share. And you're doing great so far, by the way. I love that you started about being a mother. That's usually how I introduce myself as well, because first, before everything else, I'm a mother. So you're doing great. So I know that you're a coach. You mentioned being married. So were you interested in being a coach prior to being married, or is it something that is as a result of what you've been through with your marriage and after?
Coaching is a result of what I've been through in my marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
How were you very young when you got married? Were you already in the church? Um, Tell me a little bit about the great things that led up to getting married.
Okay, so I was young. I was 20 when I got married.
Mhm.
Um, and something about me that is different is I was raised in the Old German Baptist Brethren Church. So that is something that somebody can go to Wikipedia and they can read about it. But just really quickly, I was raised with electricity, drove cars. I went to public school. Now, there was a church school, but I did not attend the church school. Um, and it's not exactly like Amish, but oftentimes Old German Baptist women will get asked if they are Amish because they wear a similar type of covering. They wear the cape dresses.
Mhm.
Um, so my story is a little bit different in that way, that I came from that conservative background.
Okay.
I'm not that any longer, obviously. I'm wearing earrings. They don't wear any jewelry. They don't wear hats. Um, but that is how I was raised.
Okay.
So I uh, I was I was a member of that for 11 years, and then I left that fellowship. But I'm still a very strong believer in the Lord, and it's because of that upbringing that I had that shaped a lot of who I am and a lot of my beliefs.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this community then, because from what you've said, I kind of have an idea, but it's not a community I'm familiar with. So for like viewers who don't understand, what makes this community different than a regular church, Baptist, or Christian community?
What makes them different is the way they dress, for starters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they also practice the holy kiss. So women kiss women, men kiss men. There's no women don't kiss men and men don't kiss women unless it's like a father to a daughter or a grandpa to a granddaughter. Typically, there's not any other kind of, and it's just a very quick peck on the lip or cheek. And so they practice that. Their communion service is a 2-day event, and there are anywhere from 5 to 6 church services in a communion weekend. They definitely have Jesus as their savior, and they they have church buildings, but their church buildings are very simple. They do not have any. They do not have a band. They do not have padded pews or chairs. They sit on wooden benches. Typically, the men sit on one side and the women sit on the other side. And a preaching service on Sunday morning would last for 2 hours. And it starts with singing a hymn, and then there's a portion of scripture that's read and expounded upon, and then there's someone who has the main message, and then there's a closing message and another hymn, and it's dismissed. Children go to the church service. They do not have a Sunday school, so children sit in that 2-hour church service. And there's districts. They have districts, and they are all over the United States. Um, the main majority of the Old German Baptists are in the eastern United States, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Virginia, but there are more and more that are in Washington State, Idaho, Oregon, New Mexico, Colorado,
Okay.
California. There's also big
Okay.
communities in California.
Okay. Okay. And what's the difference with their teachings,
The reason
if
that
any?
oh, sorry.
I was like, if any, not I'm don't know why I assumed that there was, but is there a difference with the teachings or just the lifestyle?
Their teaching would be a little bit different as
Mhm.
well. And their lifestyle, um, there would be a lot of teaching on living a holy life,
Mhm.
and that would include not wearing jewelry, not wearing flashy clothes, not being like the world, being separate from the world.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
there is some Old Testament teaching, but there is a lot of New Testament teaching.
Okay. And is this community set apart from like the city, or did you guys live like in a community, a rural area? Were you set apart from, I don't even know how to say this, not the rest of the world, but do you have like a compound or somewhere that you guys lived, or is it just something that you practice within your home because you're a member of that church?
Right. So there's not a commune. There's not, everyone has their own homes and they might be scattered around in a specific area, and the church
Okay,
decides where the lines are for each district. Um,
got
and then, you might live 5 miles from the next member, or you might live 20 miles from the next member.
got it.
And typically they do not live in cities. They live in more rural areas.
Mhm.
And they tend to own their own businesses, or if they don't own a business, they tend to work for other brethren.
Right.
And um, there was something else I was going to say, but now it slipped my mind.
That's fine. It will come back. All right. So now I have a better understanding of what it's all about. Just wanted to be clear, and I knew that viewers may have some questions. So you mentioned that you were part of that community for 11 years. So you grew up in a household that practiced that kind of lifestyle and that religion. And then for 11 years, what do you mean? Like after becoming an adult, you were in the community for an additional 11 years, or?
So I was baptized at 16, and that means that
Mhm.
I started wearing the cape dress and the covering that
Got
they
it.
wear. And then
Mhm.
I was 27 when I left that community
Got
and
it.
starting walking with Father a little bit differently.
Got it. Understand. Okay. And somewhere between that 16 to 27, you got married.
At 20, I got married. Yes. And at 21, I had my first baby.
Mhm.
Yep.
How
And
many?
then I had 4 more babies after that.
Okay.
So my oldest is 22 and my youngest is 10.
Awesome. Okay. So what was the marriage like leading up to the wedding and um, I guess a little bit after? Were you excited about getting married? Is this something that was decided for you? How did you come to get married or making the choice to be married?
Right. No, this was not something that was decided for me. Um, you have the choice to who you marry. And so I had met my former spouse on a trip to Washington State,
Mhm.
and we dated for a year long distance. We went back and forth several times, and then we were engaged for a year long distance, still going back and forth. There were some things that happened in during our engagement
Mhm.
with his family, but
Mhm.
um, I did not have any idea that people behaved the way his family behaved,
Mhm.
and I didn't know that I should be more alarmed than I was by the
Okay.
behavior. Um, I actually threatened to call the wedding off on Tuesday before the wedding on Saturday
Mm.
because of behavior from his mom, but I was talked out of that, and so we got married, and the wedding night was horrific. And then on our honeymoon, he masturbated in front of me, and we had been married a couple of years when he came to me and said that he was looking at pornography, and I very quickly forgave him. We prayed, he repented, and life went on. At that time, we had one child, um, and I was naive. I didn't even know what pornography was. I didn't know that it existed. I knew nothing about it. Um,
Oh,
and so when so early, very, very early in the marriage, we'd only been married like a month when he actually raped me. And, when you've been raped by someone who chooses you and you've been disrespected by him masturbating in front of you, you don't tend to want marital relationship with them. You
Right.
don't tend to want sex with them. You've been violated. You feel icky. You don't want that person to touch you.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously um, exhibited that. I didn't want him touching me. I didn't want sexual relationship with him. And so he thought that there was something wrong with me. Clearly he had done nothing wrong. It was just me. I was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to a minister for help. And the minister said that, well, I just needed to be having sex with him every day and that would take care of the problem.
So I want to back this a little bit, just to provide context. So leading up to the marriage, and this is something that you can respond if you want to, you don't have to. But leading up to the marriage, were you guys intimate sexually?
No.
So on the night of the wedding would have been the first time that the relationship would have been consummated.
Correct.
And you're saying on the night of the wedding, he masturbated in front of you.
No, not the night of the wedding, but
Okay.
on our honeymoon. We were still on our honeymoon.
So you had still not had intimate relations up to that point.
Well, the night of our wedding, he came to bed, he did his thing, he rolled over and he went to sleep. Like there was no, it was the morning after the wedding night. I remember sitting at the breakfast table in the restaurant, choking down food, past the lump in my throat, holding back tears, thinking, I'm stuck. I have to stay with this man for the rest of my life. I can never not be married to him, because that is what the German Baptists teach, is once you're married for life and you can never get divorced. And if you do get divorced, you can definitely never remarry. And so.
Okay. But prior to getting married, were you excited about, I understand that there were issues before with the family, but did you think that this, the person that I do want to spend the rest of my life with, were you excited for that?
Yes, I was.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that experience was not a good one. I can imagine on the night it was not a good one. So now you were feeling trapped.
Yes.
Okay. And so going forward then on the honeymoon, you're saying that's when he decided to masturbate. Was it because you weren't interested in being intimate with him, or what led to that happening?
No, it was, I don't know exactly why he did it.
Okay.
I just remember where he did it and how I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know why he did it. I never asked him questions about it.
Okay. I understand.
I just wanted that experience to go away.
I understand. And so fast forward a few months down the road, then in the marriage, there was an event where he did rape you. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about what led up to that?
So I live in Washington State, and I grew up in Ohio, but he lived in Washington State, and I moved to Washington State when we got married. So we had our wedding in Ohio with the reception, but because a lot of people from Washington did not come to Ohio for the wedding, his parents had a reception for us out here as well. Mm-hmm. And the morning of the reception, we were staying with his parents in their home, and his brothers were in the bathroom right beside of our bedroom, and he wanted to have sex. And I was like, no, I'm not comfortable with that. No, your brothers are right on the other wall, right on the other side of the wall. I'm not comfortable with that. And he did not accept my no answer.
He just went ahead and raped you.
Yeah.
And so you decided to seek some help and get some counseling after that?
It was probably 2 or 3 2 or 3, maybe 4 years after that, he wasn't satisfied with our sex life. And so he wanted to get some advice and some help. But um, he just proceeded to tell the minister that I just didn't want to have sex with him. And so that was why he looked at pornography. And
Okay. And so I can imagine after being raped by anyone, no, it doesn't matter who it is, husband or not, then of course you wouldn't be excited about, having intimate relations with anyone, much less the person who raped you. And so did you have a conversation with him after the event to say, listen, I am not feeling attracted to you because of what you did? Or did he think what he did was right? He did nothing wrong because he was your husband? How did he feel after the event?
well, we did talk about it, and um, he used the scripture where Paul says that a woman does not have control over her own body. The husband does, and the husband does not have control over his own body. The wife does. And he used that to say, well, I don't get to tell him no, and if I do tell him no, he can still have what he wants because I don't control my own body. He does.
Mm.
And so scripture was twisted to what he wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm. And was it something that occurred a lot where was he the type of person that needed to have sex daily, weekly, multiple times? And was it always by force?
It was not always by force. And yeah, he would have had sex as often as I would have said okay. I know that when we visited the minister, and he told the minister, well, I look at pornography because she won't have sex with me. But then he also told the minister, I've looked at pornography since I was 12 years old. Instead of the minister saying, hold on a minute, you look at pornography and you've looked at pornography since 12 years old. This isn't her problem. This is your problem. You need to fix your problem, which will then fix her problem. Instead, I was told you need to be having sex with him every single day.
And the minister that you sought help from was, of course, someone who's a part of this community that you were both a part of.
Correct.
So it sounds like it was something that was expected in that community in terms of what a woman's role is and what a man's responsibility is. Do you think that is true, or do you believe that that varies based on each relationship? Is it something that's taught that you belong to your husband, or do you think that's a personal problem?
You are taught to be submissive, but I don't know that you're taught that you have to sexually satisfy them whenever they want it. I don't believe across the board that that's the way that it is in the German Baptist community. I think that was this minister's own beliefs that he was sharing with us.
I can imagine how you felt when you were told that you were the problem, and in order to fix it, you need to satisfy his sexual desires whenever he had them, whether it's daily, by the hour, weekly, whatever it was.
Right. Yes. I carried that for a long time, that this was my problem. This was me. I just wasn't interested in sex, and that was causing problems in my marriage. Until one day, I remember this day. I remember where I was. I was in my kitchen, and all of a sudden, I just kind of stopped in my tracks and went, hold on a minute. He's looked at pornography since he was 12 years old. This isn't my problem. And it was like this huge weight just lifted off of me. And from that day, I was like, no, this isn't my problem. This is your problem. You have a problem. Because by that time, he had confessed more than once to looking at pornography. I would forgive. We would go on until it got to the point that, like, I wasn't able to forgive anymore. I wasn't. This clearly was a deeper issue that was not my issue, and he needed to do something about it.
So was the pornography and the sexual issues the only ones or the major ones that you had in the relationship that made you not feel attracted to him sexually?
No, there were other issues as well. A lot of those other issues stemmed from the um, the lack of love and respect from him to me. I was treated as an object.
Mhm.
I was treated as um, less than a human being. I was just there for whatever he wanted me for.
Mhm. I'm sorry you had to go through that. For what, 15? How many years was it?
21 years.
21 years. So at what point did you said you had that thought in the kitchen? Is that when you decided that you wanted to get out of the relationship or come out of that, be out of that community? When you had that realization, what happened after that? Because it
So,
takes a lot for someone to get to that point. But even more so, it takes even more courage to do something once you realize that.
right. So when I had that realization, we were still part of the German Baptist community. And
Mhm.
so I was still unable to leave or to get divorced. Um, so I started talking to older women, like, how do I deal with this? What do I do? Clearly, I'm the problem according to him. So how can I fix this? But it quickly became apparent that I really was not the problem and there was nothing that I could do to fix it.
Mhm.
And we just kind of continued.
Go ahead. I was going to ask, you said it became apparent. Is it through having these discussions with these older women? How did they advise you, these older women that you talked to, about what you were experiencing?
Some of them said, well, I want sex every day. And I'm like, well, you aren't any help because I have this trauma and I don't want it every day and I don't want it at all with this man.
Mhm.
Um, so it wasn't very helpful.
Mhm.
It wasn't until actually I started therapy that I realized just how unhelpful it was.
What were the things that prevented you from leaving the relationships? I understand that because you were part of this community, so you were tied to the community. Was there anything else that was hindering you? Was it just because of what you were taught? Because obviously you were unhappy and you knew that this wasn't right. So I can imagine that you wanted out, but you weren't able to leave because of what?
Right. So um, we were, I'm just going to fill in a little bit more of the story.
Sure.
One morning I woke up and I said, are you still looking at pornography? And he got really quiet and he said, yes. And I said, you need to move out.
Mhm.
Like, I had gained my voice. We had left the Old German Baptist community and I had started to gain my voice. There was a lot of other kinds of abuse that were going on as well.
What do you
Um,
mean? Like, what types of abuse?
so there was emotional abuse, there was financial abuse, there was um, obviously the sexual abuse, there was mental abuse, um, there was a lot of gaslighting, a lot of manipulation.
Mhm.
Um,
Working outside of the home?
I have never worked outside the home. I've been a stay-at-home mother for 22 years.
Mhm.
And so one thing that prevented me was the lack of um, income,
Mhm.
but also what prevented me was addicts are really good at saying the right things and doing the right things for a time before they fall back in. And so you it became this cycle of, yeah, he wanted to change. No, he didn't want to look at pornography. And he was so against human trafficking. But And, we'd have that for a time. And so then I would get hope again, like, okay, he actually is changing. We can actually make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would fall off again. And so
Because you
there,
wanted it to work. You did want the change to happen so your relationship could work.
right. I never wanted to be divorced. I wanted my children to have an intact family, parents that loved each other, respected each other, took care of each other. But that is not what I got. That's not what I had. Um, so, um, I would get that little bit of hope, and then he would fall off. And so then it was like, well, here we go again. And so then I woke up that morning and I just said, are you still looking at pornography? And he said, yes. And I said, well, then I need you to move out.
And by then you had moved away from the community?
We hadn't moved away, but we were no longer a part of it. We still
Oh,
lived in the same area.
what prompted the change? What prompted you, because you both decided to stop being a part of it? What prompted that change?
Being called by the Father into a different lifestyle, a different way of living, than that community did.
Oh, so you decided, okay. And when did that calling happen?
Around 2004, 2005,
Mm-hmm.
we were called to start keeping the biblical feast, keeping the seventh day of rest, eating clean, so not eating pork or shellfish. So we were called to that, and I'm going to skip over part of the story.
Sure, you can share whatever you're comfortable sharing.
We were called to that, but then we had a life circumstance that happened, and we put that on hold until that circumstance. Our daughter got sick and she died, and so we put that decision on hold to leave the Old German Baptist until a year after her death.
I'm very sorry to hear about your daughter. I've lost children, so I know the depth of the pain that comes with losing a child. So I'm very sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry that you did.
Thank you. Thank you. And was that, and you can just let me know if you want to delve a little bit more in it or if you want me to move on. I'm just curious about if you want to talk about how she died or about her illness. Is there anything you want to share about her?
Well, so she had an ear infection. I gave her amoxicillin. She had a reaction to the amoxicillin, and she was sick for 9 months. And that definitely impacted the marriage, because we were in the hospital with her 2 different times for weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those points that I had hope and thought he was in recovery, only to find out years later that he wasn't. He was actually using and doing everything that goes along with using pornography while we were in the hospital with her.
Mm-hmm. And was this like your last child or no? Because you have a 10-year-old. So she was
our second child.
Okay. So did that have anything to do with you guys leaving the community or?
No.
You had made the
decision. When she got sick, we were already discussing leaving the community.
Okay, I understand. So you ended up leaving the community about a year after that. Did you get any kind of counseling or therapy to deal with the grief for the loss of your child?
I did not go to a counselor, but I did go through something called grief recovery. Mm-hmm. And I highly recommend that for anyone, for any kind of grief. Even grief that you're married to a sexual addict, or grief that your husband or your wife has cheated on you. Pornography is adultery, in my opinion. And so, there is grief that comes with that discovery that this person has been looking at pornography, using pornography, or anything else that goes along with being a sexual addict.
Was the grief recovery, was it something provided by the community, or is it something that you sought out on your own?
A friend of ours was doing foster care, and part of the foster care accreditation, I don't know how part of the becoming a foster parent was to take these classes, this grief recovery classes. It's a 13-week, there's 13 weeks of classes. And she told us about it, and she's like, this could be really good for you with the death of Sheridan. And I was interested, and so we went, and it was extremely helpful. And I tell everyone about it. Anytime there's any kind of grief, I'm like, find a class of grief recovery and do it. Do the work, because it's super beneficial.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I used a program called, I had many programs or support that I used during my time of grieving. Grief Share was a really good resource for me. And I actually was a foster parent too. So I am familiar with that section of the training where you're taught to help the children and yourself deal with that grief and loss. So I'm very happy that you had that. And I know it was very helpful to you. Is it something that he experienced as well, or was he able to go through the program as well?
Yeah, he went through it as well.
Okay, that's great. And what about the children, the rest of your children? How did they handle it?
My oldest child was 5 at the time, and my third child was 5 months. So,
Okay.
And she wasn't allowed to go to the grief recovery. So,
well, I'm glad that you survived because you are a survivor.
An overcomer, yes.
An overcomer, a survivor, that's great. And now you're using your experiences to help great other people. So I heard you say Sheridan. That's a beautiful name. That was your daughter's name? That's a beautiful name. What kind of child was she? What was she like?
She was very outgoing. She wanted everyone to be comfortable. She wanted everyone to be included. She was very happy. She was, even in her sickness, she was a very happy child. And even while she didn't feel good, she still wanted to make other people feel good.
She was an angel.
Yeah.
A sweetheart.
Feel very blessed to have had her for almost 3 years.
Great. Yes. Were your parents alive during the time that you were married and having children and going through this loss?
Yes, my parents are still alive.
Do you have a good relationship with them?
Yes.
Are they supportive? Okay, that's great. Great. All right. So you guys, now you've left the community, and you've not moved away, but you've left the community, and you said Father. And when you say Father, do you want to make clear to our viewers, what do you mean when you say Father?
When I say Father, I'm talking about God the Father, the Lord.
Okay, so the Lord called you you had a different calling from the Lord. So now you had left the community and still married, and you woke up this morning and you said, the enough is enough. You're still, looking at pornography, nothing's changed, and I'd like for you to move out. And what was his response?
He said, okay. And then in a couple of days, I said, so have you found somewhere to live? And he's like, well, no. And I said, I was serious. You need to move out. I cannot allow this to continue anymore. This is affecting and is going to affect our children, and it's got to be stopped. And he didn't believe me. But I made it very clear to him that he did have to move out, and he did move out. He did find somewhere to live and moved out. But I did not have the proper support. We were attending a home fellowship, and because he didn't respect my no, I knew that if I attended fellowship on the same days that he did, that he would take advantage of that because he knew I wouldn't make a scene. And
Mm.
so I just said, you can take the children and go on this day, and I'll take the children and I'll go the next week. And I was told that because I wasn't coming with him to fellowship, I was hurting the fellowship. I was told that at least it was just pornography. It wasn't actually an affair. And I just needed to get over it.
And you were
So
by members in the fellowship, like leaders? Is that what? Who told you that you just needed to get over it? Was it something, the leaders who explained that to you? Now, at any point, did he acknowledge that he had a problem with pornography and try to seek help, or did he just think it was fine? Excuse me. Did he just think it was fine because you were not succumbing to his sexual desires? Did he think it was okay what he was doing?
at that point, he did not seek any help. No.
So the elders told you that, again, you're the reason and you're the cause. So you just needed to do what you needed to do. What did you do?
I was heartbroken. And he did end up moving home pretty quickly. We were only separated for 3 months, and it was the wrong thing. He should have never came home. He our oldest daughter, he was grooming her, and I did not realize it. And because I was so busy surviving, I didn't hear her when she tried to talk to me about it. So so that was also something that was going on at the same time. And he actually said some things to her in front of me and the other children that he said to her, when you dress like that, it makes me want to have sex with you. And
he said his daughter in front of you.
Yeah. And I was livid. I told him, you do not talk to your daughter that way. You don't even think about your daughter that way. That was completely inappropriate and wrong. But he didn't see a problem with it. At another point, he told her that she was sexy in something that she was wearing. And I know that he didn't see a problem with it because he also said similar things to my 10-year-old, who's another girl.
Okay. So he was saying these things to his children, to your children. Had he molested them physically?
My oldest daughter does not remember that he ever actually molested her. He pushed boundaries, like he would put his hands places that made her uncomfortable, but he never actually touched her on her private areas. But he put his hand on her thigh to see what her reaction would be. And he told her things about his and I's sex life that he should have never been talking to his child about.
So after that event where he said what he said in front of you to your child, he continued to say inappropriate things to her. And how did she come to you with that? How did she come to share that with you? I mean, you've already seen that what he did or heard what he said then. But did she come to you after just explain that, Mom, Dad said this or Dad did this?
Well, I had heard him say that to her, so I had witnessed that. These other incidences I didn't witness. I didn't, and she didn't. If she talked to me about them, I don't remember it.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to back up a little bit to where before what she did, what her response was to him saying that to her.
Mm-hmm.
So he said that to her, and I got very angry with him. And then at one point, he ended up choking our oldest son to the point of blackout. And that's when I said, okay, none of us feel safe with you in this house. You need to move out, and you are not coming home until you've gotten serious help. And he actually never did move back home. And after I made him move out, the next month, our oldest daughter tried to run away because I couldn't hear her. I couldn't even process like what she was telling me. And so she tried to run away, and some friends actually caught her and prevented her running away. But then she did actually end up running away later and did not speak to me for 2.5 years.
That she was angry at you for what she thought. She blamed you somehow for what happened.
Well, she wasn't necessarily angry with me. She still wanted a relationship with me.
Mm-hmm.
She was angry with him.
Mm-hmm.
And she refused to be like, that was a boundary that she put up by running away, was I will not be around him. I will have nothing to do with him.
So he moved away. Did he move away from the community, or he just moved out of the house?
No, he just moved out of the house. He didn't move away from the town that we live in.
Did you ever have to call the police about him, especially when he hurt your son? Did you ever call the police?
I did not. There's I have a lot of regret. There's a lot of things that I did wrong. At that point, I did not call the police. I did not call CPS. I should have.
You were barely surviving yourself.
I do now have a restraining order against him. And so myself and our 2 youngest children are on the restraining order. He cannot see them.
And he's still living in close proximity to you guys?
Mm-hmm. We live in the same town still.
Has he made attempts to contact you or get in physical? Okay, that's good. And when was the last time you had any issues with him? Or how long has it been since you had the restraining order?
I got the restraining order in October of 2021.
Was he ever physically abusive to you?
Other than sexually raping me, no, he never hit me. He never, I never had bruises externally from him. It was all verbal, emotional, mental, sexual.
And for your youngest daughter, you mentioned 10, you said that he had been inappropriate with her as well, and what he said or things that he did? Both. Did he ever, well, this is not something, she's a minor, so, but he was inappropriate with her. How's your son now?
He's good.
And you say that your daughter for 2.5 years, she did not speak with you. You guys are reconnected now?
Yes. So you asked how I ended up leaving and divorcing him. We're to that part of the story now. So I was praying for years for him to have an accident and die so that my pain could end, so that I would no longer have to deal with him in any way. And my children would no longer have to deal with him.
Mhm.
and there would be like this just there would be nothing more that could be done. He would be dead. There would be no more being able to see Daddy.
Mhm.
And when those prayers were not answered, then I started praying, I just want to be released from my marriage. Just want to be released from my marriage.
Mhm.
And you know, I went to Father often and said, I want to be released. I hurt. I can't live like this anymore.
Mhm.
And um, when I still wasn't released, I started praying, when can I be released? When I told him to move out the second time because none of us felt safe, he again didn't take me very serious. And I said, no, I am serious. You need to move out and you're not coming home. Um, and so then he did move out, and he started going to a certified sex addiction therapist. And he was seeing like 2 or 3 therapists at a time. And he made an agreement with his CSAT therapist that if he looked at and used pornography, he would let his therapist and me know within 24 hours. And he told me this. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So he moves out. He tells me that. I start doing my own therapy. I went to a EMDR therapist, or an EMDR practitioner who specializes in sexual trauma. And I was seeing a regular therapist. I was also doing a healing modality called Splachna.
What was that called?
Splachna,
Oh, how do you spell that?
SPLANKNA.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And so he's going to therapy. I'm going to therapy. I'm being told that he's in recovery. And then a year later, he tells me out of the blue, he says, I'm going to this place. Do you think I should tell them that I'm a sex addict? And I said, well, yeah, you should. And he said, and so then I said, have you been using this entire year? And he says, yeah, I never stopped. And I said, but what about you were going to tell me and your therapist within 24 hours? He said, well, I couldn't tell you because you would divorce me. And I said, okay. So I don't believe he's ever actually been in active recovery. And so that's when my prayer changed to, when can I be released from my marriage? And in 3 months' time, I had 3 witnesses in one day that I had been released from my marriage. And that's when I told him I want a divorce. And
Okay. So let's back up a little bit. You said 3 months later you had 3 witnesses in one day. What does that mean?
yes, so I knew that if Father didn't release me from my marriage
Mhm.
with 2 to 3 witnesses, because the Bible talks about on the witness, or on the word of 2 to 3 witnesses, every word will be established. So I'm very big on, there is 2 or 3 witnesses to, any big decision. Maybe it's someone else says, hey, I was thinking about you the other day and this thought came to my mind that da 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 da. And
Mhm.
then, okay, well then maybe someone else says, hey, I was praying for you the other day and this thought came to my mind, da, 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 and it's the exact same thought that the other person had. And then I start to take notice, like, okay, that's 2 people now that have said this to me.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's what happened on the day that I had those 3 witnesses. It actually was two of them were Facebook posts, and people posted these things about being in an abusive relationship or an abusive marriage and how that's not the design of marriage. That's not what Father wants for his daughters. And they don't typically post those kinds of things. And I was just like, I read the first one and I was like, okay, I agree with that. That's good. It's really good advice. The second witness was I had a splachna appointment that same day.
Mhm.
And that appointment was all about breaking a soul tie and letting go of my marriage, whatever that looked like.
Mhm.
And so then that night, I was again looking through Facebook, and another completely different post by a completely different person came up. And I read it and I was like, ooh, this one's really, wait a minute. This is the third thing today.
Mm.
Okay, Father, I'm listening. You've got my attention.
Mhm.
And I called him the next morning and I said, okay, I've had three witnesses. I am released from our marriage and I want a divorce. And I called my family and I said, my mother is still part of the Old German Baptist community. And I said, I've been released from my marriage. And so I'm going to be divorcing him. And I just need to know that I have your love and support. And she said, yes, you have our love and support. And my sister said, it is about time. Yes, I love you. I will support you. And so I moved forward with the divorce. And this is where more emotional abuse comes in. He started texting me every single day, multiple times a day. You shouldn't be divorcing me. This is wrong. And then the next day it would be, you should have did this a long time ago. I don't know why you didn't do this a long time ago. I'm so glad to be getting rid of you. And then the next day it would be, God hates divorce and you should not be doing this. Only men can divorce their wives. Wives can't divorce their husbands, according to the Bible. And the next day it would be back to, I'm so glad you're doing this. You should have did it a long time ago. And it was just back and forth and back and forth. And finally, and I wouldn't respond to them. And finally, I just said, you know what? The only thing I will respond to from here on out is if it's about the divorce and dividing assets or the children. At this point, he was still seeing the children. And that made him angry. He didn't like that boundary at all. And then one day something happened, and he actually sent me a text message with language in it, and said that he wanted to do purely evil things to me. And I just happened to share that text message with a friend, and she said, Beth, you need to leave town for at least 3 weeks. Go over to your family. And I was like, really? You think so? She's like, yeah, this is a threatening text message. He just threatened you. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't even recognize the threat. And so I sought a second opinion, and these friends said, not only do you need to leave town for 3 weeks and go to your family, but get a restraining order. He is threatening you. And so I called my family and I said, okay, this is the text message. This is what I've been told. What are your thoughts? And are you willing to take us in? And my family said, yes, get the restraining order and come over here. And so that's what I did in October of 2021. I got the restraining order and I took my two youngest children and I went and lived with my sister and her family for 6 months.
Mm.
And I did end up filing for divorce in August of 2021. Washington State has a 90-day waiting period. And so we were just going to wait the 90 days. The judge was going to sign it. We were going to be all done. Well, when I got the restraining order, he hired an attorney. And so almost 2 years later, we are still in divorce proceedings.
Oh, you're not yet divorced?
No.
Now, does having this conversation affect the divorce?
I don't think so. I don't think
Are-
that it should.
Do you have a lawyer?
I do have an attorney, yes.
So what I would suggest is once we're done editing this, or even before, I would suggest that you let him know that you had this conversation, what it was about, and be sure that you're clear. And what I will do in addition, when I send that video to you, you can also share it with them and just be absolutely sure that nothing you've said will affect the results of your divorce settlement.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I have been concerned about with my coaching because I'm very clear, that these things happened. But he puts all kinds of things on Facebook
Mm,
and it's public and it is not kind towards me.
mhm.
Um, and he is even publicly put on Facebook that he uses pornography.
Okay.
So, um, and I do have screenshots of those posts. So if
Uh,
he wants to come after me for anything,
mhm.
I've got his own words.
Right. I just want to make sure that you are absolutely safe in this. Your children are safe, and then nothing that you say or do, at least prior to the results of the divorce, would
Right.
affect that outcome. So my main concern is just what's best for you. My God, you've been through more than enough of your share. So now that you're on your journey to healing, I admire you so much because you've gone through all that. You obviously don't look like what you've been through, and that you're turning around to help folks. And your story, I'm sure, will inspire. Unfortunately, you'll be thousands of women because there are so many women who are living outside of having been a part of that community. There are so many women, different religions, background, who are experiencing something very similar. And not knowing what to do or have the courage to put boundaries in place to protect themselves and their children. So already you've exhibited a lot of courage in making the moves that you've made. Oh my gosh.
Well, and I just would say I've been there. I've been there, scared to set boundaries, scared to, and beyond being scared, not even knowing what resources were available to me. I mean, here I am. He moved out in January of 2019. So I'm 4 years and I'm just recently learned of some resources that were available to me that I had no idea back when I could have used those resources. And that really bothers me. These resources should be more readily known and available to women to
I,
know that they can get help and they don't have to stay.
how did you find out about these resources, and are you open to sharing them?
Another friend of mine who's had a very similar story,
Mhm.
she utilized these resources and then she shared them with me.
Do you want to share some of these resources that you were able to use? There's one I love to talk about. Almost every person I've talked with, I tell them about United Way. Are you familiar with the United Way? So United,
I know about United Way, but I don't know anything about United Way and working with abused domestic violence.
so it's just a resource. So if you, wherever you are in the US, if you were to go online, Google 211.org, it's a database of thousands of nonprofit organizations that help you with almost any type of problem you may have. And you can also dial 211. You dial 211, you'll get an operator. It will ask you for your zip code, and then the operator will ask you, what do you need assistance with today? And if it's food, legal services, domestic violence, whatever it is, you tell them, and they're going to search their database. And based on your zip code, they're going to give you a list of organizations that are available to help you.
Okay.
Enough people don't know about this.
Yeah, no, I had no idea.
I learned about it years ago. I lived in Maryland. I was broke 2 children. I did not know where the first dollar was going to come from to pay my rent. I didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. I had a baby that was breastfeeding, and I had a child 5 years old. And I sat in the living room, I couldn't even cry. Like, I just didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And my phone was about to be cut off, and I got a call. I almost didn't answer it because I was depressed, but I got the call, and I opened up, because I'm not someone to open up to people about, what I'm going through, because I felt this burden of shame.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I was just desperate, and I started sharing what was happening to me. And the person said, call 211. And I'm like, what's 211? And they told me the same thing I'm saying to you now. And my first need was food. So I dialed 211. I gave my zip code. I said I needed food. And the lady said, okay, do you have a pen and a paper? I wrote it down, and I called the number, and they were so kind. They were like, how soon can you get here? And I went, I got food, I got diapers. I got book. My oldest, she was like 5 and she loved to read. I got little books for her to read. I got so much food I could hardly take it home. So, and that was the first way that they helped me. And I had other needs. I'd call 211. I got help to pay my rent. I got help with legal assistance that I needed at the time. So you're right. There's so many resources out there, and people just don't know what's available to them. And another thing, when you're desperate and you're depressed, you're not even thinking, like, the magnitude of the problem is right in front of you, and you're not even thinking to be resourceful and try to find some help, because you're burned down with the shame and just the weight of what you're going through.
Yes.
So yes, if you're able to, and any resource that you're aware of, please share them with us, and we'll share them with our viewers.
Well, another one is I follow Patrick Weaver Ministries on Facebook, and
Mhm.
he has a resource to help women get out of domestic violence as well.
That's fantastic. So that's something that we'll definitely research and provide, shine some light on, so that women can know that there's help out there. Now, so you're still going through the divorce. Are you still getting therapy for your children that you still have with you? Are they getting any kind of help, because they went through that trauma as well?
Right. Yes, they my most recent therapy was cognitive processing therapy for PTSD,
Mhm.
and I absolutely loved it. It helped me immensely. The intrusive thoughts are gone. I still have jumpiness from PTSD, but the intrusive thoughts are gone. The being hyper aware is gone. Um, the the shame of being in this kind of a marriage is very real,
Mhm.
and I think that it stops women from speaking up,
It does.
um, because like me, I wondered, how did I end up married to someone like this? How did I end up here? Um, so that the shame is very real.
Mhm.
And my children did a form of CPT, cognitive processing therapy, that is for children. So
Okay.
um, it's 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 similar, but it's not as in depth, and it's still in depth, but it's not the same as an adult doing cognitive processing therapy. Um, but they also have done that. They also do SPLOSNA. I still do SPLOSNA. They do SPLOSNA as well. And then we utilize emotional freedom technique or tapping. We utilize tapping. We use essential oils to help with emotions and um, to help with grounding and balance. And um, essential oils were one of the very first things that I used for emotional support and enforcing boundaries. So helpful, so helpful for that. Um, we also use prayer. We do a lot of praying.
Mhm.
So
And that's beautiful. Um, and now you're doing coaching. You're helping other women. So how did you come to make the decision that this is what you wanted to do um, going forward?
well, I knew because of my I didn't identify it as such, but there was religious abuse in there. Obviously, this was religious abuse to tell me, a minister to tell me just have sex with him every day.
Mhm.
Um, and um, because of my experience with everything and how long it took me to finally speak up. And when I did speak up, there were those who didn't believe me. There were those who said, oh, it's just pornography. It's not, at least it wasn't an actual woman. At least it wasn't actually an affair.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know that there wasn't women. Addicts lie. He would look me straight in the eyes and lie to me over and over. So I don't know that there weren't other women. So
Mhm.
I can't say, well, at least there wasn't an affair. It was just pornography. Well, even just pornography is bad because there's so many types of pornography. And he even told me at one point the type of pornography that he liked.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I I just knew that there were other women out there like me, and I needed to help. I wanted to help. I was being called to help them in some way.
Mhm.
Um, but I still had very young children. My 10-year-old at the time would have been like 3 or 4. And I did not want to go to school to be a therapist because I didn't want to be in school for that long, and that amount of time and be away from my children.
Mhm.
I wanted to be able to enjoy them growing up because I didn't get to enjoy my older children growing up.
Mhm.
I was too busy surviving. And then Sheridan died, and then I was grieving, and I don't remember my older children growing up.
Mhm.
And that's really, really hard. But my younger children, I do remember that I've been very intentional about making memories with them. So I knew that I didn't want to do something that was going to take a lot of time and take me away from them a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I started looking into what could I do? And coaching like just fit to a T because I'm a naturally curious person. I like to learn and I like to learn about people. And so asking questions is just like perfect. and
Yes.
and then um the joy and the it's such a reward to see people have that aha moment
Mhm.
and to be able to what an honor to be able to experience that with them.
Yes.
I am truly so honored to be able to experience those ahas, those breakthroughs, those oh my goodness, this is what the Lord's telling me and this is what he's been telling me but I haven't been listening, and then seeing them take the steps. It's just such an honor.
Mhm.
So I love coaching.
Tell me about your coaching programs. What do you do? What type of coaching do you offer? So you've been doing this for how long now?
I've been a certified professional life coach since 2000 and oh my 18, I believe
Mhm.
17 or 18. I think 18.
Okay.
18.
Mhm.
But I recently went back and got another certification with the Institute for Transformational Nutrition, and I am my specialty will be emotional eating and mental health or mental wellness. Um,
Beautiful.
And as far as programs, I'm working on programs. I don't have very many programs right now. Um, I'm I'm waiting. I have some things in the back of my mind, but I'm just waiting on some confirmation and moving forward with those. But I do one-on-one coaching and intensives.
One-on-one coaching and
Intensives.
okay. And how does a viewer contact you? How do they find you to learn more about Beth?
So I have a website, Beth Brunk, BETHBRUNK at Podia, PODIA.com. There's also email, bethbrunk@proton.me.
Awesome. And I know you have social media page.
Yes,
Instagram.
and it's Beth Brunk Coaching on Instagram.
Awesome.
And I just had another resource for recovery for men and women is Sexaholics Anonymous.
Awesome. So that may be something I put on the website as a link to. We have a page on our website called resources, available resources, I think it's called. And I put links to organizations that I know actually do provide help. So that's something I'll consider putting on there as well.
Yeah, Sexaholics Anonymous. It's around the world. It's based on Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's specifically for the spouses, friends of sexaholics, and that has been very beneficial to me as well.
That's great. Beth, you have been through a lot. And like I said, I commend you for your strength. And for women who are, I like to look at it, I like to consider myself like a lighthouse. I was listening to a program one night, and they said something about a lighthouse. And I'm like, that's how I imagine myself. And people like yourself who help others. Because as a lighthouse, you are literally in the midst, or you've seen every storm that there is. And then you're sharing your light to those who are out there in that storm struggling, showing them the way in. And so that's what I see when I talk to people like yourself, or when I imagine myself, what I do for people who are out there still struggling and not knowing which way is the right way to turn. And I believe that people like us are so important, because sometimes it doesn't even have to be having a coaching program, or have just by sharing your story that someone else can relate to and see that you're not alone. And these feelings that you're feeling are legit because someone else has experienced that. Mm-hmm. And then just see that they've overcome it. So there's hope.
Yes.
So there's so much value in sharing your story. And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing, sharing such intimate details about what you've been through. And you've lifted that shame, because shame is that thing that covers you down. It burdens you so much. But once you're able to lift that burden of shame off of you, it changes everything. So I do commend you for your strength and your courage, and for what you're doing now with your life. So what has happened to you in the past is not for nothing, because going forward, Father did call you for a reason, and he chose you.
Yes.
So I'm so happy that I met you today, and I'm so grateful that you felt comfortable enough to share your story with us. And I'm encouraging everyone to go on out to your website and learn some more about you, your story, what you've been through, and what you're continuing to do now to help others.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me.
Oh, and
sure. You are beautiful. You are just a beautiful, physically you're beautiful, but you have a beautiful soul.
Thank you, Beth.
I appreciate you. And can I just say one last little thing for the viewers?
Sure. That was my next thing. Like, what would you like to leave viewers with today?
Okay. So I don't know how many people know of Brene Brown. She's pretty popular right now, but Brene is a shame and vulnerability researcher. And so when you have all this shame and you don't want anyone to know what you're dealing with, who you're married to, and what they do, the antidote to shame is vulnerability.
Mm,
And my experience has been that if I'm vulnerable, it makes it safe for others to be vulnerable as well.
mhm. That's absolutely true. That's 100% true. My heart is full. I really, really am happy that we had a chance to talk today, and I hope that we can continue to keep in touch, to communicate and collaborate in some way to join platforms and spread our light to even more people.
Yes, I would like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you.
All right. You have a wonderful evening now.
Okay, you too.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.